to episode 46 of React Native Radio. Today on our panel, we have Peter Pikarczyk.
Hey, everybody.
I'm your host, Nader Dabbit, and today our special guest is Ken Wheeler. Ken, welcome to the show.
What up? What up?
Not much, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, dude.
So when you're not on Twitter, kind of having one of the best Twitter feeds out there, what do you do in your, what do you kind of do for your job and things like that?
We're talking about like at work or recreationally?
Both.
Well, at my job, I'm the director of open source at Formidable. Previously, I was just like a software engineer at Formidable. And my job right now is pretty similar to my job that, prior, I guess. But, I had done a lot of client work, particularly Walmart, right? So I was on a team that helped re-platform Walmart over to React. And then we took parts of the mobile properties and converted them to React Native. So that spun down a little. I do a lot of open source. I've worked for a couple different clients. But now I'm pretty much doing a whole lot of open source. And I'm actually getting back into some Walmart React Native stuff. So on the clock, that's what I'm doing. As far as off the clock, primarily drinking. Other than that, doing weird stuff. So I don't know if you saw, I made a couple open source libraries pretty recently. Not the sort of things that you'd probably use in your day-to-day work, but, things that were fun for me. You know what I mean? Like passion for like React Music or React Game Kit. It's like, I like the React programming paradigm a lot. I like JSX, and I like to do really weird stuff with it. So, if I think like an API is cool, I'll be like, hey, what does that look like wrapped up declaratively? You know what I mean? Like, how can I use this like props and, internal state to, make a friendly API to something and, make it really workable, and see how it translates to different browser APIs and things like that. So, yeah, a lot of client work, a lot of, open source, and then drinking and abusing JSX.
So yeah, I love React Music. I kind of forked it, and I was looking at it, and I was wanting to kind of port it over to React Native, and I kind of messed around with it a little bit, but I couldn't really figure a few things out. So while I have you on here, is that something that's possible? And if so, what do you think needs to be done to get that going? Like if I wanted to start doing that, what would be missing as far as the DOM stuff?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny, right? For React Music, so you're wrapping an imperative browser API, right? And I don't know if you looked super far inside, but I'm rendering a bunch of empty spans into the DOM. And you might say, that's crazy, man, but hear me out. What that does is it gives you lifecycle methods, right? So, if nothing mounts, then you never really get a mount, right? But if you have a DOM, right, the DOM doesn't need to be reconciled for lifecycle methods to take place, right? So if you render anything to the DOM, suddenly you get all these lifecycle methods, in play, right? So as far as doing that on native, right, there's also another big push from certain parties to take web APIs, right, and port them over to native APIs, retaining the same syntax that is codified for the web. So it's like, if somebody, and I know people are working on this, right? So when the web audio API is successfully ported to React Native, with a, one-to-one API or, even close, right? Then you'll be able to start doing all those things. You start to load samples into buffers and play them, or, do oscillator-based synthesis and, all that business. And then as far as, having it be, composable, you would really just render empty views instead of empty spans. And
yeah, I was kind of thinking that. So you would basically give the view like a certain height based on the value, and that would be the moving part as opposed to the span or something like that.
You don't. You could just render any DOM element. Just any DOM element. Just right. I use spans just because they don't have any dimensions. They're an inline element. So it's like rendering nothing. But you're just rendering something just to get access to the lifecycle methods. That said, I know a lot of people who have done some really cool stuff with it, where they're taking those components and wrapping them in other components that provide like UI and hooks for these things, right? So people are doing things like they created like mixers for it, and like UI like range sliders to like tweak like oscillator props and stuff like that. And that was kind of like my idea behind it in the first place, was to make like this like really good set of core primitives. So I'm not like building like a DAW in React or anything. I'm just building that declarative primitive set that would let you build something like that had you wanted to.
Nice. So I guess I'm very familiar with Formidable Labs as far as like seeing you guys in open source and follow you on Twitter. And I know you guys kind of do consulting, I think. But for everyone listening, can you kind of like talk about what Formidable is and what they do?
Yeah, so we are a consulting shop, but we do all kinds of things. We have a huge commitment to open source. So we have a lot of officially sponsored open source. We give, some folks time to write it. In addition to that, we work with a lot of different companies like Plotly, Microsoft, Viacom, Starbucks, Walmart, to do, really good application work for them in like the Node and JavaScript sort of setup. It's primarily Node and JavaScript focused, but we're not necessarily contained to that. But I guess you would say that we're like the Node, React, JavaScript experts. One thing I will tell you is there are some smart dudes and ladies. Almost every single person there is smarter than me. I mean that genuinely. And it's nice because a lot of people have different domains, right? So you have a lot of people who are good at different things and like very good at different things. So I come in and I'm like, hey, I'm the open source guy who builds all this weird stuff and then gets drunk on Twitter and it's hilarious for marketing. But you have other people who are like very good at like a lot of different things. You have very good designers. You have very good like functional testing people. You have like completely awesome backend devs, API guys, Node guys, all that stuff. So it's cool because it's like anything that you personally lack in a particular domain, you could be like, oh, well, I'm having difficulty with like my build setup. All right, well, I know the exact dude to go to. And, there's like 2 or 3 dudes really, but, what's the best way to do testing? Oh, well, this dude wrote the book on testing. So it's a pretty cool environment full of some pretty wildly skilled individuals. Great place to work and grow.
So instead of a bunch of generalists, you guys have a bunch of specialists. And if you need like, you're building an app and you need this person, you kind of can reach over and be like, hey, I need some help with this. And they just jump in. And that's pretty interesting. That's really interesting, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like formally divided into like front end and back end. Like you have like Node folks, and then you have like the front end folks, and designers and everything. But just some folks are just more passionate about other things than other people. So you kind of like self divide into different domains of things. Like initially, I was like the crazy React guy, and then now everybody's doing React. So
are you still crazy though?
Oh yeah, now I'm the crazy React Native guy.
Not just the crazy guy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm definitely the crazy guy, but there's a lot of React talent there now. A lot of React Native talent, and a whole lot of Node talent too. I didn't know how little I knew about Node until I got there. I was like, wow. I thought I knew Node. I set up a couple of APIs with Express, so I thought I knew how Node worked. Like people are like really, really good at Node, and they school you, and it's good. You learn off of them and stuff, and I guess everyone becomes a bit of a generalist, feeding off of each other. But certain people definitely have things they're passionate about, and they get expertise as a result.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love environments where you can kind of like, I kind of call it the hustle. I don't know why, but like it's sort of like, because we're freaking programmers and we just kind of sit at our desks and code, right? But like we're all sort of like hustling, right? It's cool to like kind of look over to the person to the left and the right of you and be like, damn, they know exactly what they're doing, and they're like the heavy artillery, right? Like these Node guys that you're talking about, or girls, like they know their shit so well, so you can go to them, right? Or they'll support you with like whatever issue you're having. I don't know. I like kind of like created this like underworld gangster version of like developers for myself. Like, like, oh, he's so hard, like he understands like Node way better than anybody. Or, like this guy did some insane, like React component, built, something cool. Or this girl like designed the sweetest artwork for the website, and everyone's just kind of hustling together. Does that make sense? Like I sort of like,
yeah,
I love that.
A synergistic hustle.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're all in this together. It doesn't matter where you're looking. Like everyone's got each other's back.
Thug life.
So, what are you currently working on as far as open source wise? Do you have anything that you guys are going to be kind of focusing on over the next couple of weeks or months? I know we have the holidays coming up, but any announcements or anything like that you guys are going to be putting out there?
Yeah. We're just wrapping up some really cool stuff with Victory. Have you guys seen Victory?
No, what is it?
I don't think so.
Victory is our D3 wrapping library. It's a database like charting library. It works on React and React Native.
I did see this. I just haven't used it yet. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good time, and it's about to be even better of a time. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, there's one thing I've always been seeing, and something we've needed is good charting for React Native. So it's cool that you guys are working on something. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. I like it a lot. I work on it, so I guess of course I like it. I think I mean, if you needed a chart, this is. If I ever needed a chart on a mobile app or in a website, this is probably what I'd go for based on me working in React and React Native all the time. So we have some other stuff up our sleeve that I'm not privy to talk about, but you'll see eventually. One thing is that we're actively committed to improving Spectacle. Have you guys seen Spectacle, the presentation library?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes, we released Spectacle Editor. Did you guys see that? It's like a Electron app GUI editor for Spectacle presentations. It's a good time. If you want to whip something together quick and you don't really want like interactive like a componentry in there, like if it's not like this like super custom like component show off kind of deal, if it's like literally just doing like a presentation, and you're doing code samples or images or GIFs or words, it's a really quick way to put it together. Regular Spectacle gets a little bit more powerful with the customization, where it's like when I first wrote Spectacle, right? I wrote it because I had to give a talk and I hated Keynote, and I still hate Keynote. And what I wanted to do is I was like, I'm sitting here like giving a presentation about React, right? About React components. And I would feel so good if I could just show them live how it works. So I wrote both Component Playground and Spectacle. And when you combine the two, it makes for pretty cool presentations, because it's like you could show a component on the screen and then like update the props right there. And then like you have a component right in the middle of your presentation, and it's updating based upon the props that you're putting in there. So I mean, especially for things like workshops, it really, really helps to just see it happen. So yeah, it's pretty chill, and it's about to get a lot chiller. Using it, you see a little bit of friction here and there, with different things. So we're trying to polish it a bit, add some new features. So you could probably see some pretty cool stuff coming to Spectacle soon.
Why am I just now seeing Component Playground? This is pretty awesome, and apparently it's been around for a minute.
Yeah, quite some time. We use it in a lot of docs, actually. That was like the first reason I wrote Component Playground was for docs. So that like when we're releasing React components, people can kind of just, try it before they buy, so to say.
You've been doing a lot of stuff with React Native recently. What do you like about React Native, and like kind of why have you been drawn to it, I guess?
Well, I like React. I think React, like the React component model, is a fantastic way to program things. As far as React Native, I remember like them saying like it's coming out, and I was like very excited. And it finally, I wasn't on that like beta list initially, right? Like some people, I guess like the people who like
me neither.
They like went to like ReactConf or something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it was something like that. Like they were able to use it, but I wasn't on that list. So when it got officially released, I was pumped. I was like, whoa, and like I think I made like the first fart app in like 26 minutes after it was released.
Was that so the first app ever written in React Native? Like, in the public, I guess.
I think it was the first fart app written in React Native. So that was cool. And, it actually was cool. It's like hilarious, like, haha, the fart app. But, one of the best things about React Native, in my opinion, is the native module system, where you can bridge over to native functionality, right? So for me, right, the first thing that I did out of the box was I want to make a fart app. And, audio doesn't come out of the box. So I had to go into Objective-C and bridge over like an audio class to play the fart noise. And, the fact that I could bridge native functionality over 26 minutes after it was released and have it play fart noises says a lot for the excellence of the API. It's a delightful and I don't want to say easy, but it's accommodating And then, that's React in itself. You have a small API, a small API, but that it's very powerful. You know what I mean? And React Native is the same way. There's nothing you cannot build with React Native if you're willing to get your hands dirty. So it's like, if you feel like learning a bit of Objective-C and Java, the world is yours as far as that's concerned. And, I think there's been this push for like the whole hybrid app thing for a long, long time. And we've been doing it in web views, and it always felt stupid because it's a web view. And now, right, you're writing it in JavaScript, but it's real. It's real UI. It's real views. It feels like an app. So for me, that was amazing. And I had made apps in Objective-C. I made apps in Swift. I had made apps in Android. You name it. But the fact that, I liked React at the time. React is great. You can do it and it'll work on iOS and Android. And, the possibility of the bridging system, it just clicked for me. I was like, dude, this is amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I've been fascinated by native development ever since I became a programmer. And I, too, was developing hybrid apps because I'm a web developer and I'm not like that good at native development. And I was never too happy with what I came out of it. But with React Native and even with some of these other things that are coming out, like Angular 2 has the thing with native script, they're great. The one thing that I've been noticing is the value that I'm able to deliver for my clients since I began, developing React Native. So they would come to me previously and we would talk about the expense of a native Android app and native iOS app and also a web app. And that was usually the three things that most of my clients needed. And before, the price was either really expensive or they were going to get a hybrid app. Now, when I'm telling them and I'm showing them, what they can have for as much as the hybrid app and the web app or less with React Native, it's a very easy sell, and they're very happy with the product. And it seems to have like revolutionized the way that I'm dealing with my clients. They're a lot happier, and everything just goes smoother. So, as far as Formidable, like, have you seen a similar thing go on with some of your clients and the companies you guys deal with?
Yeah, we have a, I mean, that's both React and React Native. I feel like it lets you get stuff done pretty ridiculously quickly. And for React Native, right, you're targeting two platforms, which is great. And we have clients and projects where we're writing React Native and everybody's happy. It's fast. It's like not a huge learning curve there, in my opinion, as opposed to other things. And again, you're targeting different things. I think we're going to see more of that moving forward, right? Like, it's funny. It's like you take something that folks are comfortable writing, and then you can transform it and hit all these different rendering targets with it, which is amazing.
I love it. I mean, I suck at predicting the future, but I have a feeling that we're going to be applying this to a lot more than we think. And it's like, and even stuff like React Native and like basically giving anyone the ability that understands like JavaScript to build whatever they want, that just sort of solidifies the argument that I always like tell people that like programming is easy. Like everyone's always like, my startup failed because of the app, or like this was the issue. And I'm like, it's not, like the reality of it is like, what we're doing as a community is we're empowering all these people that weren't able to build a native app anymore. They could build the native app, right? With just like if you're starting out from scratch, like when I was trying to learn stuff, Objective-C was the biggest pain in the butt in my life, right? Like I absolutely hated it and I gave up on it when I was like 18 or 17, 2007, right? But now I see, like teenagers left and right on GitHub just like banging out, React Native apps. You know what I'm saying? Like, granted, the code isn't like, the best quality or whatever, but they're still doing it. You know what I'm saying?
Dude,
like,
you see that one guy that makes a game every day?
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's bananas.
Yeah, it's like amazing. I'm like, man, like if this is happening now, like what's like the next, like what are the next like 5 or 10 years going to look like, right? Like what else are we going to be like consolidating? Maybe we'll figure out the big, like web React versus like native React, right? And have like the seamless integration where it'll just like build to the correct target, without having to do all these complex things or, work at Facebook to make it happen. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no,
when's that good? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, I think that, there probably isn't going to be another framework anytime soon that isn't inspired by React.
Oh yeah.
And what you're going to probably see moving forward is more of this component architecture written in a single place that compiles out to different things. And again, what it is, it's like, you can write it, and maybe so more powerfully or more sturdily in the original language, rather than using it as a rendering target. But like when I gave my React Next talk in Israel, one thing that I'm saying was it was about making games with React Native, and I was like, should you make a game with React Native? I was like, I don't know. Like, you can. Should you? Well, here's the thing. Like, it's like if you have a choice, right? If somebody has a choice between writing a game, or between like learning Unity or writing a game in SpriteKit, or not writing a game at all, you know what I mean? It's like, it's like if they know React and want to make a game, now they can make a game, right? If this was a person that is just doesn't have the time to learn Unity, doesn't have the time to learn SpriteKit, so it's either they do it in React or they don't do it at all. I prefer they do it rather than not do it at all, right? So I mean, it's like, should they? I don't know. Who's anybody to say what anybody should do? You certainly can. I have it running 60 frames per second on the web and on native, so you can.
Totally, right? Because at the very least, it might inspire somebody to build the native version that, may very well like kill it in the future. You know what I'm saying? Like we're all kind of learning from each other. We're like, it's not a competition per se, but it definitely motivates me, when you're over there, like banging out, open source projects, and like Natter is writing like insane blog posts that are getting 1 million hits every day, right? Like, I love it, and the same should be for everything else that we do, like in our programming world, right? Like, sure, I may not know native, but my buddy does, so I'm going to mock it up in React Native. It may suck or whatever, but then he can build it natively, do all the performance stuff, and we both learned something new from it.
I think it's definitely going to be a trend moving forward. This sort of thing isn't going anywhere. It's too productive.
What about VR? What do you see in the VR space and React Native in general?
Well, I mean, obviously they announced the React VR, showed it off a little bit. Personally, I really, 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 really want to get into VR, but I have a MacBook Air, and that's not going to cut it. I also do not own an Oculus Rift. What I will tell you is that I have a Google Cardboard, and it's crazy. And I can't even imagine what, like, even cooler ones are like. But I mean, so when I first heard about VR, there's only one thing that I want, right? And that is, here I am, right? I'm sitting here right now in Seattle in a hotel room on my MacBook Air, just sitting here talking to you guys, right? But I'm on my MacBook Air, right? I have one screen here, right? I'm sitting here, I'm using like spaces to like separate like terminals and code editors and everything like that. I'm confined to, what is it, like a 13-inch screen. One thing that I'm really excited about is developer tooling using VR, right? I could be sitting here in this hotel room right now with a VR headset on and have, 3 30-inch monitors set up, triples angled, right? In virtual, I mean, you don't even need a laptop, right? You could have a keyboard and a telephone and VR goggles, and suddenly you have this sweet 3-up display with all your code on and everything, and you're looking around and everything. And I think that's one of the things that I'm super excited about is writing code like I'm friggin' RoboCop or something. That's going to be amazing. As far as actually making VR stuff, I think that'd be sweet too. I'd like to see, obviously the games, right, is like the initial target, right? Is your gaming and everything like that. But, there's two things, right? I'm very interested to see what it does to like information consumption type things, right? Like, you're reading blog posts or you're taking in media or news or something like that, what that means for that and film and things like that. Additionally, augmented reality. Right. So when I have VR goggles on, I feel disgustingly vulnerable. Like somebody's going to come kick me where the sun don't shine, and there's nothing I can do about it, And as soon as they become mainstream, I'm going around and kicking all my friends when they have them on, because that's just the kind of person that I am. But that's why I think that augmented reality is a little bit cooler, right? Because if you just had like contacts or glasses, right, and you're just like looking at a table and like suddenly this thing's on the table, you still have your field of vision, right? You're not sitting here, with these dork goggles on, getting kicked by your friends. Um, it's like you could have those screens in front of you and they're virtual screens, but nobody's gonna come up and punch you in the side of the head. So
yeah, so it doesn't take you out of like you're not completely out of your space. You're still in your space, but you're still able to take advantage of some of the VR stuff.
yeah, just cyborging your field of view.
So I just want to mention, I personally love the idea of augmented reality. Ever since I saw this video growing up of this like sort of creepy dude that has these like contact lenses in his eyes, and it's sort of like a game for him. Have you guys seen that? Video? It was on like Vimeo like a long time ago, and it was like the dangers of like virtual reality. But it's like before people knew what virtual reality was, it was like actually augmented reality, and like he just had like waking up like 2 points, like going to the bathroom like 5 points, like. And the entire thing was like a point system, like going on, and like the whole thing was like going on a date, and like basically like through the knowledge that like whatever AI was doing, was like figuring out like what the girl likes or whatever. So he was saying like all the right things, and that was like the really creepy part about it, But like aside from that, just being able to like see things popping up in like your field of vision, like while you're outside or whatever, like I think like that's like the exciting part for me.
Absolutely, and I think like right now, like VR, right? Like with the enclosed goggles and everything. Like if you want to play like Call of Duty, you're kind of just like running on like that like weird upside down symbol thing, where it's like a 3D treadmill, I guess. But with augmented reality, it's like it's like Pokemon Go is augmented reality, right? It's like if you wanted to play like Call of Duty, right? Your map could be your backyard, right? And just dudes popping up, you're taking them out, right? And you're like walking around, and you're not going to get punched. That's my biggest thing with VR is I don't want to get punched. I know the second the goggles go on, I'm going to get punched. And I'll be honest with you, I know that because if my friends are over and they put the goggles on, I'm punching them. So it's an inevitability.
I tried Oculus for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and I was blown away. I know I'm kind of late to the game on that, but it was like a demonstration where it ran through like 10 or 15 minutes of different things. And one of them was like a dinosaur, like, and the other one, like you're standing on this like really tall building, and then it has the microphones in your ear. It has the speakers in your ear. So you're like hearing the wind like blow past you, and you feel like you're really going to die. It's so cool. It's some really cool shit for sure.
Did you feel vulnerable with them on?
Yes. I felt like I was going to die or something like that. It's hard to explain.
I never put on Oculus goggles. I've only put on cardboard goggles, and I felt vulnerable.
Oh god, yeah, you should try it.
I got like a little. I haven't been able to try the new ones. I tried with the first goggles that came out, and it was some like roller coaster, and I had like motion sickness. I was like, holy cow! I put the goggles on. I was in some chair. Like my buddy had like a special chair, and then like I got out and like I fell over, because like my body thought it was actually on this roller coaster.
Oh, that's nuts.
So did anyone read that blog post from Eric Elliott last week that said something like native apps are doomed?
I did not.
Okay, well, it was basically kind of going towards the argument that everyone needs to be moving towards progressive web apps, and like it's basically too expensive to build native mobile apps. And it had like thousands of people that like either liked it or left comments. It caused a pretty good discussion. But also we've been seeing some discussion on Twitter this week about one of the Chrome devs kind of saying that pretty much all of the like current web frameworks are kind of like not optimal for speed and things like that. So I'm kind of curious what all of our take is, if we can have a quick discussion about the take of like how like web performance is and how React Native like fits into all this stuff. And if you have like a client that comes to you and they're like, hey, I have a company and these are my business objectives, like, how do we go about giving them the best options as far as like what is, I guess, best for them?
Whew, getting started on this one. Okay, so first of all, native apps aren't going anywhere. right? Absolutely not. Native apps aren't going anywhere until the web browser capabilities are expanded to allow web applications to behave and feel like native applications. And that's it. I mean, given the opportunity to use a web app or a native app, I will use the native app 9 times out of 10. Facebook or Twitter or what have you. I'm using the native app. It's just how it goes. I don't know. I can't tell you exactly why. Hand feel, what have you. I'm using it. I'm using the native app. So, I mean, I've been a big whiny crybaby on Twitter for a very long time about us not getting the kind of APIs that we need to create rich applications on the web, rich performant applications on the web, make it feel native. In my ideal world, or what I'd like to see, or what I think will actually happen eventually, is you're going to have an app browser. You're going to have a web browser. You're going to have the best of the web. You're going to have the discoverability, the URLs, all that jazz. But it's going to run apps in a container, not HTML. And that's how that's going to go. Regarding progressive web apps, I don't think that's really what they're shooting for. Is to have I mean, they certainly want it to be fast, but the thing behind progressive web apps, and I think that I know a lot of these guys on the Google team, and their hearts are in the right place. And most of them, they haven't said anything wrong. There's a couple dudes who have said a couple different things, a couple different missteps, or marketing, what have you. Got a couple folks upset, because they're passionate about it. But the real thing with progressive web apps for me is making it accessible, right? So it's like, if you have an app that people think about, like when you use an app, right? You have an app that ties into your life, right? Like Twitter, right? Like I love Twitter, and if Twitter stopped working for some reason, I'd be furious. I'd be so pissed off. Or if Twitter was like all like being slow and everything like that, and I had to reply, I was like in the middle of like an argument on Twitter. That's my technology. I want to get in an argument on Twitter. If I'm in the middle of an argument on Twitter and it slows down or has a problem, or I get like poor reception or something like that, I'm going to be furious, because it's going to kind of interrupt like kind of what I'm trying to do here, my communications, right? It's like, and think about something like even more critical, right? If you're doing something like, like health or something like that, any of these things. So, in doing React Native, right, you get exposed to a lot of different testing devices, and older iPhones and the great deal of Android fragmentation means that there is a lot of people with shitty phones, and there's a lot of people in shitty service areas, right? So I think the whole progressive web app thing is more about accessibility. It's like we should make these apps perform really well, in shitty network conditions, have sync when they come back offline, you're not losing your shit. They should load up fast, right? And a lot of the time, that's not just end user, right? I mean, it's client as well. If you're on an e-commerce site and you're trying to have somebody buy something and it takes 5 seconds to load. I mean, you A/B that, the amount of conversion that you're going to lose from the shit being slow. It's I mean, I think that doing everything you can to reduce the size of your payloads, everything you can do to make these things cache and be quicker, the better. Again, I don't think that they're trying to make these feel like native apps. I think it's more of an accessibility thing.
And speaking of Twitter, have you tried to use the mobile version of Twitter after being on the native app Twitter? It's like a completely different app. It's like a completely different experience. There's no comparison at all. Like
it's actually it's pretty good.
It's good, but I'm just saying, I think it's like light years away from the native. At least in my experience, I don't know. I'm on an iPhone. I'm pretty much always on the Twitter app. So I know they rewrote it in React recently, but as far as like the transitions and stuff like that, I just feel like the native app is better. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think they have different targets. I think that the native app is a native app, so it feels and looks like a native app. The mobile app is great. I mean, it's quick, it's sleek looking, it's pretty nice, and I think that it's engineered for kind of like a different thing. It's engineered like it's going to be quick no matter what. It's like you don't have to worry about that really with the native. I mean, you do, but with the native app as much. Whereas the web app, they're really shooting for performance there. And they hit the nail on the head with that, because it's pretty rapid.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I definitely support the native apps aren't going away argument for a variety of reasons, but in this case, it worked out very well. So Ken, I want to ask you something. I'm sure this is on a lot of people's minds. How do you do it? How do you do it, man?
What's that? Being extraordinarily handsome at all times?
Cranking out all these open source projects, right? How do you motivate yourself? Like, what makes you tick?
I love it. I think that's all there is to it. The shit genuinely fascinates me. It really does. I'm the kind of person who will get like really, really, really into something, like really into something, a borderline obsessive, right? So if I get something in my head, like React music, for example, like if I'm like, hey, I want to make beats with React, right? I'll sit there like all like drunk on Twitter, like I'm gonna make beats with React. And then like the next day, right? Like I'll remember it and I'll go and I'll try it. And if I get like a proof of concept and I'm like, wow, like I can actually do this. Like, this is feasible. I stayed up, I think, for like, I don't know, like maybe like 32 hours writing React music. I just if I'm like really excited about something, I don't sleep. I'll just do it. And my wife hates that so much. Like if it's been a couple weeks, like I've been doing like client work. I've been doing like some kind of like management kind of stuff around like the open source. Working on Victory, less visible stuff. And, I've been trying to do a little bit more maintenance rather than, just like build crazy shit and put it out. When I get bitten by that passion bug, if I want it done, I'm staying up. I'm gonna take modafinil and stay up for 48 hours until it's done.
Oh, I know all about that stuff.
Yeah,
that's some good stuff. That's some good stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like, if I want something done and I'm passionate about it, I can't wait. Because if the fire goes out, then what do you have, a half finished project? Nah, I mean, when you get momentum, it's a gift. So you really got to ride that momentum out until you have something as a result of it.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean by that, right? Like you got that small window of opportunity, right? Like, oh man, this idea is amazing, and I'm going to like pursue it, and it's going to take up the next, X amount of hours of my day, or I'll do it later, and like later is like essentially never, like I've noticed that about myself too. Like,
yeah, you second guess it.
Yeah, exactly, because you start thinking about it, and then like I maybe like like the lazy part of you just sort of takes over, and it's like I don't know if it's gonna work out anymore. Yada yada yada.
Yeah, what if, right?
Yeah, or like, oh, I googled it and something's there, or oh, like I wasn't thinking straight last night. There's always something.
Dude, something there is no excuse, especially if you have a killer feature that it doesn't. I see a lot of this like, hey, you should just like contribute to the existing stuff, and it's like, not really, because like if I had like an existing repo and some dude was like, hey, check this out, here's a PR to completely rewrite this, I'd be like, yeah, okay, buddy, like, are you kidding me? So it's like, if you're just adding a feature to an existing library, okay, you PR it or whatever. But I mean, if you have like if you're gonna like fundamentally do it differently, write your own thing. I mean, there's no such thing as too saturated of a market. There just isn't. Like when I wrote Slick Carousel, like there was like 3 different carousels around everything. They were like, somebody might say, hey, oh wow, this carousel market. What business do you have writing a new carousel, right? I wrote that carousel and it ate their lunch. So it's like,
I didn't know you wrote Slick.
Yeah,
that thing is awesome.
And it's like, I don't think something existing is any reason not to write the same thing better. Especially if it can be better. And then that's where a lot of that passion comes from. So it's like, like I am going to write this and it's going to be better, and then if you just push through it and do it and don't sit there and second guess it and be like, well, I don't know, like they have like a big user base and everything, if you just push through it and study the competition, look at them, say, hey, this is what they do, this is what they do, I've used this before, here's the pain points, and maybe this was written like a little while back, and now the web's a different place because it moves so fast these days. Maybe I have like some newer features that I can add. Maybe I can engineer this in a way that's, a little bit more conducive to the way that we're doing things nowadays. And then what you end up with is something great, and it's like, if you had listened initially to like that, like dismissive kind of thing, you wouldn't have something great. So yeah, I mean, if you have an idea for something, just do it. Not to be all like Nike and shit about it, but seriously, just do it. I have a coworker, right? And he's like, dude, I want to make this like dashboard for Node, but like, I don't know. And I'm like, dude, do it, man. And and he went and he's like, oh yeah, he's like kind of on the fence. Like I could see him like tipping a little. I was like, no, dude, you should totally do it, dude. And he went and he took time out of his day. He took weekends. He worked on it really, really hard. And it was no dashboard, no JS dashboard, right, dude? It was his first open source project ever. First thing he ever open sourced, and it has like 2,700 stars or something right now.
Nice, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
He pushed through and built it, dude. And and like when he was done and it was popular, it felt good. It's like, I wish my first open source project got that many stars. My first open source project was the dumbest thing in the entire world. It was like, I forget what exactly. It was like one or two different things. It was like turning like JSON into HTML, or it was like this thing. I thought it was going to revolutionize how you have UI on a phone. I called it nipple, right? And you anytime you're on mobile, right, you put your thumb on the screen, and it did like one of like those like round pop-up menus where you could then shift your like finger into a quadrant, right? It was like, I thought this. I was like, oh man, this is it, man. This is I was like, this is gonna change everything, man. It's like now we're sitting here on the iPhone, but we forgot about the click wheel on the iPod, which was the best thing ever. And yeah, it never really took off, but I'm so glad that Jason just slayed it on his first project. And it goes to show you, dude, if you just push through and do it, you'll get the stars.
Absolutely.
So if your first open source project is successful, do you suggest that they just retire and like Peyton Manning the entire process and like that's it? You're like, the first one's successful, no more?
No, because then like, right, like you spend so much time, you're like, oh man, am I ever gonna like have like a popular open source project? And then you have one, and then it's like, oh shit, like am I gonna write another one? And then it's like, then you have this thing like, can I do it again? You know what I mean? Like, can I do it again? I've done it again on a number of occasions, right? But still, even after doing it, after having, I have multiple projects with thousands of stars each, and every single time I sit there and say to myself, like, can I do this again? How sad would that be if I couldn't do it again? Like, you sit there and you wonder, like, am I going to have a good idea again? Am I all cashed out here? It never really stops. So I'm just going to keep building cool things. If people like them, they like them. If they don't like them, that's okay. I'm building it because I like to do it. But it definitely nags you in the back of your head, like, shit. And can you make magic happen again, big dog?
So I think we're getting close on time here, but before we start wrapping it up, I do want to maybe ask one more question. If Peter, if you have any more questions or something like that, go ahead. But I'm kind of curious, where do you see React Native going over the next 6 months, year, couple of years, just off the top of your head, I guess?
Well, I mean, you're going to see it's reached out to a lot of different places. It's reached out. You have the Universal Windows platform, iOS, Android. You have desktop, Apple TV, all that stuff. There's a lot of different projects out there, and I just see them getting more stable, right? There's going to be better feature sets, better tooling. It's still very early in all of it, so you're gonna see this stuff get a lot more polished, a lot more production grade. Additionally, what I see happening is you're going to see a lot more compiling to it. So you're going to be writing this in different things as well. I see certain functional languages, things like that. You're going to like you said before, like you saw like Angular 2's doing it. Well, Elm's doing it, and then Clojure's script is doing it. So you're gonna see a lot of entry points and a lot more outputs. This whole like, hey, I'm gonna write this in this cool language, and then it's gonna work in all these other places. That's gonna be a thing moving forward. As far as React Native, it's just gonna get better.
Yeah, I agree. I like all of those points you just made, and I've definitely been seeing a few projects that are compiling to React Native, so it's going to be interesting to watch. And as far as the stability and the quality, everything just seems to be getting so good right now. It's just better and better every release. So
Hey, folks forget how early we are, in all this, right? Like React Native, has it been 2 years?
yeah, 2015.
Yeah, right? Like React may have been, closed source in 2012, open source, 2013, I remember, maybe end of 2012. But it's like, what is that in development time, right? Like, sure, it may seem fast for us, may seem fast for the JavaScript world, but these are like the humble beginnings, believe it or not, all of it, right? Like everything that we're doing are the humble beginnings, even for like the web APIs, right? Like with all the commotion we've had with like Safari being the new IE6, for example, right? Like we'll get past that, it'll work out, and then like 10 years from now, we're going to be like, holy crap, like remember like React Native? Like look at it now, right?
It's exciting stuff.
Okay, cool. We'll go ahead and get to the picks. Peter, do you have any picks?
Yeah, so I think I have some cool ones today. If you haven't seen this yet, there's something called Google Interview University, and it's a GitHub repo with like everything you'd like want to learn to work at Google, right? And like this thing goes on and on and on, right? Like clearly it's not an easy, task to accomplish or a job to get. Like there's even like an Emacs and Vim section, which is kind of silly, But if you think of this resource outside of the whole like I want to get a job at Google, there's just like a treasure trove of like fantastic information about compression and networking and garbage collection and design patterns, right? All these little things that you kind of forget about, like now exist in this one repo with a lot of folk, like written by folks that used to work at Google, right? So it's cool to see that, and like my day to day is a lot of just like call it startup work, right? Like I'm not years into building anything, right? Like these are all the humble beginnings. So I kind of overlook a lot of these things, right? Like performance sometimes isn't a main concern. It's not the concern if the product's not out yet, right? So like let's get the POC out and then we can worry about it. So it's kind of nice to look back and kind of like shuffle through this and just like learn something new every day. And it's called Google Interview University. My
Very
second
cool.
pick, yeah, my second pick. This one, I'm sure you two have probably seen this, but it's Blueprint.js from Palantir. Palantir was like the first like tech company that I wanted to work for like a long, long time ago. So I've always been like sort of obsessed with them. And they released this entire React UI kit for just like any sort of like components that you like to build. And just consider it sort of like a bootstrap for React. Like, right, there's a ton of them, but I've always been like obsessed with like what they're doing and what they're coming out with. So it was a big one on my list.
Ken, do you have any picks?
Oh boy. My picks. I'd like to give a shout out to Visual Studio Code, which I've been playing with the last couple of days. If you haven't tried it, try it. The IntelliSense is ridiculous. I've actually been really enjoying it, and their Vim mode is pretty good too. I like that. One of my picks would be the Progressive Web Apps with React articles by Adi Osmani. I thought those were really cool, and had a really good breakdown of like profiling and everything, and how it all works. That's pretty chill. Reason. Yeah, Reason is amazing. So Reason ML, which I guess is like a syntax extension on top of OCaml. Really, really, really cool. I can't recommend checking that out enough. And if I were to have another pick, I guess it would be Elm Plot, which is like a plotting library in Elm, and it's kind of funny to pitch that. Well, I'm also pitching Victory. But I've always been interested in what something like reasonably complicated but cool looks like written in Elm, and it's really, really nice. It's a nice like API. It's really written nice. So I mean, that's some code that I really enjoyed casually reading.
Ken, now before you move on, Reason seems like the coolest thing ever, but like what would you write in Reason, right? What are some like practical sort of applications that you yourself would like utilize Reason for?
Well, I mean, you can use it to write web apps if you want to. You can use that via Buckle script, which is pretty chill. There's a lot of tooling like Rebel and stuff like that, which is pretty great. Additionally, right, you could pretty much write anything you could write in OCaml, right? So I mean, you could do like regular systems programming, or if you wanted to do like Yeah, you could import like a GL lib and make a game or something like that. Yeah, there's a lot of different things you could do with it.
Okay, my pick is a book. It's called Algorithms to Live By: The Computer Science of Human Decisions, and it's written by Brian Christian. It's pretty interesting. It kind of talks about how to apply algorithms that you kind of might be using in your computer science day-to-day work and kind of apply those to real-life scenarios. But it's actually generally more recognizing patterns and how to efficiently make decisions without having to kind of waste any time or any extra effort and kind of make the best and quickest decisions possible. And he gives a lot of different examples and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. It's called Algorithms to Live By, and I have gotten about halfway through it so far, so I'm going to go ahead and pick that. And I guess that will go ahead and wrap up episode 46. Ken, I really appreciate you coming on all the way from Seattle tonight.
Dude, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, definitely. We'll hopefully have you back on again in the future if you're interested. So,
yes, sir.